Hello, 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 and welcome. This is Her Talk Show. My name is Sabrina Victoria, and I am here with Amy Stone. We're going to be talking all about contentment and how it is an inside job. So get comfortable as we explore the triumphs and challenges faced by women worldwide. We're going to be offering insights and inspiration to fuel your personal and professional growth. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
If you're listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love in the comments. We are here every day delving deep into the realms of health, wealth, and leadership with some of the most brilliant women globally. We've interviewed over 650 women, and today we are adding another one to the list. We have Amy Stone. She is a mentor and coach for step parents and supports adults in step families and or blended families with tools and strategies to empower them and create a life that they love. What a topic.
Yay!
Yeah, more so, right? Because it's just becoming more and more and more blended families is like the thing.
I think so. I mean, the data is, I'm not a statistician or a data person, but that is what the numbers seem to show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So we are talking about contentment. We're
Right.
talking about how it's an inside job. And I can very easily see how this could be related to step parents, blended families, because of the stress, the anxiety, the uncertainty that could be bubbling up within these family dynamics. So when you think of the word contentment and you think of the individuals or the community that you help the most, what really comes up for you?
That's a really good question. So for a long time, I used the word happiness. And happiness was a little bit confusing. I love the idea of happiness, right? But it gets confused or mixed up or doubled up with like pleasure and joy, right? So like I'm happy when I paddleboard, I'm happy when I go to the beach. And contentment is a word that I've shifted to a little bit because that's more of like a feeling state that sort of bubbles up, right? It's like an underlying like contentment, something we can be more hopefully intentional about, something that is not as flighty, as transitional. And for me, and this is just my personal perspective, happiness and joy, those are like laughter and smiling, and contentment can be peace and
Mm,
calm. And so when I'm talking about my life in my family, my life as a human, my life as a woman, my life as a wife, a mom, a stepmom, a partner, all of those things, right? Contentment to me is maybe a better target. And so that's why I like I'm intentional about that word choice. And so what comes up for me when I think about that is the peaceful state of allowing good stuff in my life, a hot cup of coffee, a sunrise. Some people like tea. I tend to be very Ted Lasso about tea. It's not my thing. What else? Taking a deep breath, just chilling on the couch, nobody bothering, that kind of stuff can make me content. Being, just cool things, daydreaming, reading a good book.
that's fabulous. So I assume you are a step parent.
I am. I've been a step parent for a long time, over 25 years. I met my stepkids when they were young, but they're grown now. And I also have 2 children, and they are almost fully grown, semi-launched.
Yes. So was there some difficulty in the beginning? Is that what kind of led you down this path?
So sure. So I am really upfront with people when I talk about this, that when I was in that stage where it was tough, I did not know that 2 decades later, I would be offering to help people through it. But yeah, I am a person who, and people come into blended families and step families in all different ways. But I boldly charged into life as a step parent, thinking to myself, generally, I'm nice. What could go wrong? And then was kind of gobsmacked with the struggles of the day-to-day grind that came at me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, like what have I done? And it's not that people didn't warn me. I have to be honest that when I look back, people did encourage me to think about it before I did it. But I had that blind confidence that I don't know if everybody has it in their mid 20s, but I definitely did. And I was just like, I saw it as like, no, of course I can do this. What, do you not believe in me that I can't do this? Like, but it can be challenging to figure it out. And it can be lonely. And I don't think that's particularly unique to stepmoms, to be honest. I think that you can find newly married, new parents who would describe the situation similarly. But after talking to hundreds of other step parents, that feeling of confusion and isolation is one that repeats.
Hmm. I love what you said here. I'm nice. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? I was totally, I mean, I just was true story. My mom, when I told her what I was doing, she was like, "Oh, that sounds like a lot." Those were the words that she used. That sounds like a lot. And I saw that as a challenge. And now when I look back, probably close to 30 years later, I'm like, you know what? She wasn't challenging me. She was offering that she had a little more life experience and that marriage and kids are a lot of work and it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally get that. And being an adult, and I know you talk about this a lot, like being an adult in general is hard.
Oh, it's so hard.
So
It is the greatest fake out of mankind. When you think back to yourself as a child, I don't know if you're like me. I thought the adults around me knew what they were doing. I thought they had, am I allowed to say bad, use sentence and answers on here?
yeah.
Okay, I thought they had their shit together and I thought they had the answers. And I realize now that they absolutely did not.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember early on as a step parent being assigned to take somebody to like a sporting practice, like soccer practice, right? And we got there and we didn't know where we were going. And this little person is looking up at me like, well, where do we go? And I'm like, how would I know? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea what to do in the middle of the night when somebody, anything is sick, needs stitches, nobody knows what to do. Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of these things. I'm 50 now. We had a thing break in our house like a couple months ago, and I was like, I don't even know what it's called. I don't know what it's called. I don't know who to call. I don't even know who to ask.
I love that. I rent. I've been renting for 8 years now. And I actually have a joke with that. Like, I don't have to worry about like who to call. I just call one person. There's like pros and cons of renting and owning, but that's like the one thing that I hang on to, where I was just like, I just call one person. I don't have to know anything. I just call one person and then just magically whatever is wrong gets fixed. And that feels good to me.
No, listen. I am so, that's the other thing that I have really shifted about in this phase of my life. I remember taking a lot of pride in doing things myself and figuring things out when I was younger. And now I very much enjoy when other people do things.
Yeah.
Right. Like to have that person where you call and you're like, just, if you could just do this,
yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm so happy that somebody else does this. Like anything that other people do. Like when I go places and I'm like, I don't have to clean this, I love that. Yeah.
I totally get it. 100%. Intuition.
Ah,
Yeah, I know that you dive into that a lot when it comes to being a woman and when it comes to
yep.
being a step parent, an adult. What are your views on that? What are your thoughts on the importance of listening to your intuition?
So I think it can be really important. I also think that it's very easy as a person who is around small kids to get disconnected from your own intuition, to get so involved in what is going around on for the people around you that you're more tuned in to their signals than your own, right?
Wow.
And it's my opinion, right?
Yeah.
That this is one of the things that causes, that's the wrong word, but just let's go with it, that results in so many women when their kids get to be between, 12 to 18 years old, that like they feel like they have to reconnect with another version of themselves. They've been so connected to the success and daily struggles of their children, with how other people see their family and their house, with their vision of who they are being defined by, these other things, the, school moms or the soccer moms or the baseball moms and dads, right? They disconnected from their own things. And then it's like you wake up and you're like, oh, wow, now my kids are living their best life. But where did that other version of me go? What do I like to do? What do I? And so reconnecting to that intuition is good. And when you're a step parent, a lot of times, and this was definitely true for me, you don't have models of other step parents to follow, right? So you've got your own parents. Some people do have great examples of step parents, but a lot of people don't. And so then when you don't have that example and you don't have like an internal dialogue about what you want to do, it can be filled in by, other people's influences. Like, so you can find yourself looking to your partner for how you're supposed to be doing things, looking to characters in movies for what step parents are supposed to do, looking for anybody to do that. And I think that that's actually one of the things I wish I would have known more, is that is when it becomes even more important to tune into the message from yourself and be like, what is it that I want to do? And what is it that I want to create? And who is it that I am and that I want to be? Because that's where contentment, I think, flows through. Like if you're trying to do something that somebody else wants you to do, it's real hard to allow that. You're just constantly like performing for other people, performing for yourself. You don't even realize it. And like relaxing and tuning into yourself is I think when the contentment bubbles up.
Yeah, when you're saying performing like other people, it's kind of like making me visualize like a monkey,
A little bit.
like a performing monkey
And
who's
we all do that, right? Like, I
yeah,
mean, I would be a liar, pants on fire if I would say that how we show up for other people is not a factor in our life experience, right? If you don't get your kids to school on time on a regular basis, people will make judgments about you. That is a thing that happens. That's what we live in. That's what we live with, right? And so, so you can, even if you are normally late everywhere you want to go, you might for 12 or 15 years of your life be like, no, we are going to get on it and get there on time because I don't want to deal with this. And that's
yeah,
fine. That's,
yeah.
yeah.
How do you suggest your clients navigate when you're meshing families together as far as who's the disciplinarian on either
Okay.
side? Like, I feel like this could actually cause some, if you're doing it correctly, could help with contentment because
Absolutely.
there's like definitive boundaries
Yeah.
around what's appropriate and what's not appropriate versus just like winging it or
Yeah.
flailing around, just whatever happens, happens. What are your thoughts on that?
So how long do you have? No, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So one of the things that when this is actually, okay, so this is a really, really common thing that brings people to my neck of the woods. Frequently, people will describe this as having a difference in parenting styles. They'll be reading books and reading things online, and they will say, I have a different parenting style from my partner, from the ex, from the other house, from the aliens on Mars, whatever it is. That's how they will describe it to me. And that's probably true, right? Because each of us is different. There's not like a homogenous like parenting style machine that's out there like stamping out a whole group of people who all do everything the same way. So one of the things I offer people is that I don't think there's a situation in any house where people unilaterally agree on every single thing all of the time. And so honoring that and understanding that this negotiation between the adults and the kids is an ongoing process from birth to like what, 25, 30, like whenever we stop doing this. And so there's no end to this. There's no time where it goes away. That was something that surprised me. I always thought that there would be like some sort of stopping point with this parenting thing. But like every day I wake up and I'm like, again, more. So that's one thing. The other thing is differentiating between discipline and punishment, right? Is sometimes really helpful, right? Like, are we setting up a framework for how we're going to educate and train and raise our kids and do things in our house? Or are we censoring and punishing the children for doing certain things? And that's going to look different in every single house. If I'm talking to somebody where one of the people or both of the parents are military parents, it's going to look very different than if I'm talking to people who are, engaging in forest school and sound baths and, gentle, peaceful parenting, right? Those two households are going to look very different. And in a lot of ways, neither one of them is better or worse than the other. Okay. So all of that wishy-washiness aside, I think that the more important work is the process of the adults and if the kids are old enough, adults and the kids like coming together to talk about like how we live together as a group, how we treat each other as human beings. What are the house rules that we all follow in the house, and who does what and whose responsibilities are what? And what happens, at least in my family, is that I just kind of assumed that all of that would just figure itself out. Yeah. Like, I don't remember anybody sitting me down and explaining to me how my house worked as a kid, because it had just sort of, it happens before we're aware of it. We grow up with this invisible set of culture that we're familiar with. And then we move in with somebody else who has their own culture from where they came from. And then you add 2, 1, 5, 7, not completely trained human beings to the mix.
Yeah.
And it's complicated. And it's really, really helpful to sit down and define it and talk about it and know that it's going to probably be different for a lot of different situations and different things. The common teaching in blended families is a version of you should let the biological parents set the rules and do the discipline. And that sounds great, right? I don't disagree with it. I will say that I think there's an important caveat, which is that if you bring an adult into a household, it's not nice to say you need to live here and be exposed to all these things and be impacted by all these things, but you don't have any right to participate in the conversation about the things that directly impact you. That makes the person who's the new adult feel like a second-class citizen who's living at the mercy of other people's rules. And that's a really uncomfortable place to be. So in a nutshell, the thing I offer people, like as a soundbite, is try not to force yourself into the pre-existing culture that was there before you got there, and instead come together and work on creating the new family culture that you guys are setting up together.
Wow. I love that. And I totally get what you're saying as far as you kind of think it's just going to happen.
Right.
Procedures, like it's just going to. And I think we all do that, even as couples.
Yes.
Without kids. where we're just like, we don't necessarily always have those tough conversations. We move in with each other, we get married, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with shit.
Yeah.
And
Like, why are you
now,
loud at night? Like, why,
yeah,
like, why are you doing this thing that you do that you think is so normal? That did not
yeah,
happen in my family, you know? Like,
yes,
of
yes,
course we're on time to the airport. Who goes late to the airport? Your family. Okay, fine. You know.
yes.
What do you mean you don't unpack your suitcase right when you get home? That is how I do things. Why would you leave your socks here? You know?
Yes. Yes. And then you are also introducing, like you said, a 1, 7, 9
Ah,
girl. Yeah.
yeah. And
Who's
they
used
don't
to
know,
certain
and they'll
things.
push everything.
Yeah.
Kids, by their very nature, I think will push the boundaries because they're like figuring things out. So they don't know.
Yeah. I used to tell this story a long time ago. I forgot about my son. There was a time in my life for probably around 5 years where I just stopped matching socks. I was
Yeah.
just over it. I'm just like, and I would literally leave the house with 2 different socks. Not like different, like one tall, one short. They'd be like both short, but one would be pink and maybe purple. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
stopped. And my son started doing laundry on his own by age 10. I stopped doing his laundry by the time he was 10. And so I went into his room one day, sometime after the age of 10, and none of his socks were matched.
Yeah.
Like, well, not even that. Like, I noticed him in life without matching socks. And I remember thinking to myself, he should not be walking around with the mismatched socks. But then recognizing, like, oh shit, he got that from me.
Oh, that is one of the weirdest things of adulthood is when right? Because we want our kids and our stepkids to take the best from us and none of the stuff that we wish
Yeah.
we hadn't done, right? And then when you turn around and you see your kids doing things like you did that you maybe would edit if you could edit the movie of your life, it is a very disruptive experience. I
Yes.
actually, with the sock experience, I buy all of the same socks.
A lot of people I noticed,
Like
yeah.
so, and that didn't work. The girls other than me, so I always wear the same socks, but the girls other than me in the family, this like socks were like a form of expression. So that didn't work for them, but they mismatched, like you were saying. They saw that as just creative expression. Yeah, so when we mismatch socks, it's less obvious, but they can really be like, if I've got, one, they can be different heights and different manufacturers and we won't notice, but they just sort of squish them down and they
Yeah,
look generally the same.
totally. But to the point of what you're saying, as far as like you grow up different,
You grow up different.
somebody coming in who's all about matching
Oh yeah.
would be like, what is going on to my son? Maybe
Yes.
like, what is wrong with this child not matching socks? I mean, this was 20 years ago. My son's 20 now.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think
10
that
years
I
ago.
thought I was going to be, I had a vision that I was going to be that mom who was always right cutely dressed and had kids in matching outfits.
Yeah.
And I do not think that that has ever happened in 25 years of my family
Wow.
life. And when I think about that, I mean, we'll do family photos and people will show up and wear what is assigned and stuff. But I think about that and it's so weird to me because I'm not actually that person. Right. Like, so I never wore the same clothes as anybody else in my family. We were not matchy. I'm not a person who gets up and is like super cute every single day. And so the idea that I would have been that as a mom is so funny to me because I'm like, I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that would ever be me. That's not who I am. Like I am a flip flops and shorts kind of person, so are my kids and my stepkids and my
Great.
husband, like that's who we are.
That's great. That's great. So, as we're kind of wrapping things up, I'd like to talk a little bit about conflict and kind of like how do we get back to contentment, right? How do we get back to happiness, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
When there is strife, when there is conflict? I know we talked a little bit about open communication.
Open communication helps.
Yeah. What are some things? What are like a couple steps when we're finding ourselves in the middle of something like this with kids, we're all the things. What are one or two just key points
All
that
right.
our
So
audience can take home?
I want to put a big upfront asterisk about this, right? Because whenever we talk about conflict, you do have to put the asterisk up there that is like there is a difference between conflict and where there is abuse or mistreatment, right?
Ooh, okay.
It's a totally different category. And abuse and mistreatment happens all the time, sadly, but that's not something we want to like manage. That's like and work through. That's something that needs to be ended and resolved. But conflict in terms of like disagreement and fighting, it's a spectrum, right? Some people love conflict. Like it's like they there are people who get together and they like love to have spirited discussions and nobody is upset. And there are other people who are really, really upset by any sort of disagreement. And knowing where you fall into that is helpful in your in any of the relationships, right? Like, so if you have people in your family who enjoy spirited conversations and you do not, it's good to know that. Like, don't sit next to those people at the holiday event, or be ready to tell them, hey, I know you're having a great time with this, but I'd rather not have this conversation. So knowing who you are and how you react to things, like some people, I really don't like yelling. I don't yell. That's not true. I could yell. If I yell, that means you're about to be hit by a car, the house is on fire, something needs to change. But so if I find myself with people who are yelling, when I learned that about myself, I was like, oh, that made it really easy for me to say, you know what? Is this conflict or am I misunderstanding the signals? Right? Like, is this person just loud? And so that's a thing. But so accepting that conflict is a thing that naturally occurs that is not necessarily a sign of a disaster is really helpful. Really, really helpful. A lot of people think that a disagreement is a sign that something has gone wrong. And that something is, then they internalize that something is wrong with me, right? If I'm fighting with my husband or I'm fighting with my kids, I'm a bad partner. This is a bad marriage. The kids are bad. Everything is falling apart. And there's another way to look at it, which is that there's a disagreement in this moment. And that's just what's happening in this one moment. But it doesn't mean that, the sky is falling. It means that we have to resolve it. One of the things with conflict resolution that's really interesting is that understanding that you don't have the same decisions and the same opinion, that actually can be a resolution, right? Like the agree to disagree. People don't like that, but that actually can be the end of a conflict, right? Like, so when this came up a lot a couple of years ago was during lockdown when parents were having a disagreement about whether or not to vaccinate themselves and their kids and their family, right? There's no guarantee that people ever come to the same opinion about that. And so and that also happens in divorce and marital agreements, there are times where you may not actually ever agree with that other person. And so then the resolution is, okay, if we don't agree, we acknowledge that we're never going to agree on this. How do we move forward or not? And so that is open communication. It's also conflict resolution, right? But the overall thing is coming to the mindset, because I'm a coach, right? Like we deal with mindset and how we perceive the world and so on and so forth, that it's possible that a disagreement is not necessarily an emergency or like a really big thing. It may just be what's happening in this one moment. And the bigger decision is, how does this fit into my day, my week, my life? And how do I want to move forward or not with this set of information?
Wow. I get that. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No problem.
We have a ton of people watching live. Hello, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in. Nice to meet you all.
Exactly. Thank you for being here, hanging out with us. I would love, Amy, for you to, obviously we're getting a really good idea of who you are, what you do, but if you could let us know exactly what you do and who should be reaching out to you. We have people listening live here. We're obviously going to have people watching on the replay. Who do you help? Who should be reaching out?
So people tend to come to me at one of three times. One, they are thinking about becoming a step parent or committing to a relationship where they would be a step parent, those people get a gold star because I was not looking for help at that point, and I admit that. That's a great time to reach out. The other time that people come to me is that they have entered into a committed relationship. They're either married or they bought a house or they've moved in with somebody who has kids and they realize they're in over their head and they're not sure what to do. And the third time that people tend to reach out to me is when they've been at this for a little while and they describe themselves as, I'm at the end of my rope and I need to make some decisions. So that's the times I tend to hear from people. I'm a coach and a mentor for step parents. I either help people with one-on-one coaching, or I do have a standalone program, which is you can go through and just listen to all of my wisdom in like an online course. And I do that because as a new stepmom, I admit that the times that I realized I was stressed out was not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It was like 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, sitting in my closet, questioning my life choices. So that's why that exists. All of my greatness can be found at amysaidso.com. And I'm happy to hear from anybody who is at any phase of that, honestly.
That's awesome. And then where do you hang out on social media the most? Where can people follow you?
So I'm not great with hanging out on social media as like, it's like if as like a business coach who's like, you should do all these things on social media. I'm not good at any of those things, but I am on Instagram at Amy Says So Coaching. I am on Facebook as Amy Stone or Amy Says So. Those are the two main places that I am on social.
Gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts as we wrap it up?
So the thing I like to remind people is that, specifically women, right? Specifically women, is that if you listen to the fairy tales, who we are is defined by who we marry and where we live and how many kids we have and our Pinterest-worthy family portrait. But I want to offer you that your happiness is completely separate from all of those things. You will meet in your life happily married people and very unhappily married people. You will meet happy single people and unhappy single people. You will meet happy divorced people and unhappy divorced people. The two things just are not as connected as sometimes we feel like they are.
Wow.
And in there is the permission to be happy with whatever your family looks like.
Beautiful. Great way to close that up. Thank you so much. Well, this has been great, Amy. That brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for all the inspiration. To our dedicated listeners, those of you that are still here, and those of you watching on the replay, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other every step of the way by having conversations just like this one. Until next time.